Now then, guys, Quinn's Dude here, back on the Rad Music Chat channel. Thanks for joining. It's been a while, and for those who are perhaps interested, I kind of got a bit too caught up in the whole caring so much about views and subscribers. Now, of course, as a content creator, we want our content to be seen, but it kind of took over the whole reason that I started this, which was because, you know, I love the process of researching and filming and editing these videos. And I hadn't done one for I haven't done one for a couple of months, and you know, it kind of dawned on me that, you know, it didn't seem to be like anyone really cared, and it wasn't until my mum and my window cleaner, how's that for random, said, hey, are you going to upload any more videos? Haven't seen any in a while. And I thought, you know what? If two people care and have noticed, then, you know, it's worth doing. And as I say, I just need to rediscover the love for the process, which in preparing this video, I've done everything before filming. So all the kind of putting together of the graphics and the songs, etc. So yeah, it's really been really fun getting back on it. So hopefully I'll pick it up again. So what are we doing today? I thought we'd kick back into gear with a really fun 10 with Ben, and I'm going to look at 10 bands that I think should be or should have been huge. Okay, so first up, couldn't start this any other way. This is Strung Out. So, Strung Out have been my favourite band for the last 23 years, since I properly discovered them in the year 2000. They are an unbelievable mix of so much that I love about music in one band. So Strung Out come from the 90s skate punk, Epitaph Records, Fat Records scene, Californian scene, and have kind of came up through that and then forged their own path. Strung Out are a great way to start this list, purely because they, like all the other bands on this list, really do straddle several genres. They don't neatly fit into one little box, and I think in a lot of cases that's why some of the best bands are the bands that aren't as big as people think they should be, fans of them think they should be, and it's because they don't neatly fit into one sound, one scene. Strung Out have a huge metal influence, as well as a Californian punk rock and hardcore influence, and so much melody. I'm gonna do a video one day, a deep dive into Strung Out as a band, but I've chosen the album Twisted by Design from 1998 as the perfect record for someone who is just checking them out for the first time. Twisted by Design isn't necessarily my favourite Strung Out record. In fact, it isn't my favourite record, but it is a perfect jumping off point because I feel that it's a really good mix of the kind of first part of their career, and then shows what they kind of where they were headed as well. Next up, we have a band that are also really close to my heart, and this is Young Guns from England. So Young Guns have been inactive since 2017, bar a run of 4 headline shows in England in November of last year. Young Guns a strange one. They seemed like they were destined for really, really big things, and basically to be as popular and big as I guess Pierre's Yumi at 6. But it never quite happened, and I'm not sure whether it was business decisions or changes slightly in musical direction, because each of their 4 albums is absolutely fantastic, and is a band that they don't have a bad song, in my opinion. This one was particularly hard to choose an album out of the 4 for people to sort of start with, but I think the most rounded and complete version of their sound is probably the last record, which was 2016's Echoes. I'm just a huge fan of the songs that this band write and the sound and style that they have, and in particular, I'm a massive fan of frontman Gustav Wood. Both his vocal lines and melodies, and also his lyrical content as well is superb. Next up, we have North Carolina's "He Is Legend." He Is Legend, like most of the artists on this list, especially Strung Out, are another one that A, have a real hardcore cult following, and B, to the people into them, just feel like they're really in possession of the best kept secret in music. He Is Legend are really, really special band in the fact that they are so diverse, but also everything they do sounds like He Is Legend. They you know, in the same song they can drop something that's like the heaviest riff, you know, section of music that you've heard, and then in the same song often can then drop one of the happiest, hookiest, brightest choruses that will just be in your head for days. I'm lucky enough that He Is Legend is one of those bands that I'm not into on my own, and I have a very good friend who is I would say probably more into them than I am. We've seen them a couple of times together, and I was going to choose their 3rd album, It Hates You, which seems to be one of their most popular and a good way to jump off, but he suggested that I choose the album after, which is called Heavy Fruit. Again, another one where there's not really any bad place to start with He Is Legend, but Heavy Fruit is a really good mix of everything that the band is all about. Because of the scene that they came from and the record label they were on initially, and a lot of the bands that they would tour with and were friends with, He Is Legend kind of came up through the sort of hardcore and the screamo scene, but very quickly it became clear that was not, you know, what they were all about. Sometimes it's sludgy southern rock and metal, and then other times it's 80s influenced pop rock, and just everything in between that you can imagine. You've just got to listen to them. So this next band is a band that I found completely by accident. I came to them pretty late in their career. I didn't find them until 2017. And it is Maryland's Ballyhoo. So here comes another Maryland summer, and I'm such a bummer. So 3 of Ballyhoo's sort of biggest influences, inspirations, is Goldfinger, Sublime, and Green Day. It's fair to say that is a good summarization of how they sound, but they've also got a hell of a lot more going on as well. The lead singer and guitar player of Ballyhoo, Howie Spangler, is super prolific. The guy just literally self-professed insomniac, and he's always up working, writing songs, doing something related to the band. They kind of fall in that scene of the Cali Roots Fest and all those kind of beach rock festivals and things, but where a lot of their contemporaries, bands such as Pacifier, Erasure, Stick Figure, bands like that, where they kind of very much just sort of sit in the reggae rock. Ballyhoo always sticks out as being much more of a punk rock reggae rock band, which is really cool and really sets them apart. They've just got a little bit more edge, a little bit more energy, a little bit more bite about them than those other bands. Love Howie Spangler's voice. The reason why I've chosen 2018's Detonate album for the sort of one to start with Ballyhoo is because it has some of their most laid back reggae stuff. It has some of their coolest upbeat ska stuff, and it also has some of the heaviest stuff that this album does have the heaviest stuff that they've ever done on it, and it all works. It's so cool. I just think Ballyhoo should be so much bigger than they are, but again, they don't sit nicely into one category, so that's kind of par for the course with the bands on this list, and they're nothing in the UK. Check out my link as well, where I talk about the band's Girls album, which is my favourite of theirs. Now we're going to go to something pretty different from Ballyhoo. Misery Signals. Once again, this is a band that has a real devoted hardcore cult-like following. This American-Canadian, for want of a better term, they are lumped in with the metalcore scene, but they are so much more than that, and a band that were formed out of tragedy. So, Of Malice and the Magnum Heart is the first of Misery Signal's 5 full lengths, and they are they're only one of 2 bands on this list of 10 that I'm using their debut album to kind of best represent their sound. It doesn't mean that the other albums are not worthwhile. Far from it. Everything this band touches is worthwhile. I just feel like this is probably the best one to give you an idea of what you're in for as a band. I am a heavy music fan. I love crushingly heavy music, but melody to me is always something that will be more attractive. And now and again, you find very, very special acts that can be brutally heavy as well as absolutely gorgeously melodic. Misery Signals, and in particular on Of Malice and the Magnum Heart, are it's hard to think of many bands that do it better, if any. Again, something that makes Misery Signals so very special, other than the really off-kilter time signatures and wonderful instrumentation. I mean, the bass player, the drummer, and both guitarists to this band are awesome. But again, what makes Misery Signals so special for me is the vocalist Jesse Zaraska's delivery. It's so passionate and just so raw and laid bare. Uber musician, producer Devin Townsend also produced this record and has produced, I think, at least 3 out of the 5 Misery Signals records. But anyway, his little touches and influence is all over this album. Chances are you will have checked out Misery Signals if you're a fan of bands such as Shai Hulud, Poison the Well, Hopes Fall, It Prevails. If you're a fan of any of those acts, then even if you're just a heavy music fan, you owe it to yourself to listen to Of Malice and the Magnum Heart. If you're from Australia or have spent any time living in Australia, then you know who Grinspoon are. If you're from anywhere else, chances are you don't know who Grinspoon are. Grinspoon are an alternative hard rock band that formed in '95 in New South Wales, Australia. They actually won the how they got their big break was they actually won the very first Unearthed competition, which was run by the alternative radio station in Australia called Triple J. The album New Detention that I've chosen here is the third of their 7 records released in 2002. And for me, again, is just one that I think is probably the best at kind of representing all the elements of them, what had gone before, what was to come. Honestly, though, Grinspoon, sometimes they sound like a hard rock band. Sometimes they sound like just an alternative rock band. Sometimes they sound like a pop rock band. They're just a really great all-round rock band that just have great songs through all their albums. They literally are a household name in Australia. I mean, I'm talking daytime TV. Everyone knows who they are, and singer Phil Jameson is one of those faces that is just, he's kind of seen as a national treasure in Australia. I mean, they were on Universal in they've always pretty much been on a major label in Australia. They've run various Australian record industry awards. Their songs have been used on network television shows, but it just seems they have toured outside Australia. They've definitely hit the UK and the US, and I think they very quickly found that it just, I don't know whether again it was business decisions or the lack of promotion, but it just never really happened for them. Sadly, they haven't released an album since the excellent Black Rabbits, which was 2012, but have remained pretty active. They've come out of hiding for various big tours. They supported Cold Chisel on a big reunion tour that they did, and they come out now and again and do Australian festivals and always appear pretty high up the bill. More of a legacy act at this point, really. They're doing a lot of tours where they're playing sort of some of their older albums in full, and in fact this year just toured New Detention playing the album. So it's logical to go from Grinspoon to San Diego, California's Unwritten Law.
With the music we feel. Well, here's your message from above. And if you wanna make plans come.
I say fitting to go from Grinspoon to Unwritten Law because they have done numerous tours together in Australia. Grinspoon helped break Unwritten Law over there. The two frontmen, Scott Russo and Phil Jameson, are great friends and have done acoustic solo tours, the two of them together. Musically, the bands are not too far apart, kissing cousins, I would say. So the self-titled Unwritten Law album from 1998 is the band's third album, and is often known, affectionately known as the Black Album. This was the album where they truly sort of left behind their skate punk beginnings from their first two albums and kind of were forging their own path. As there's still a lot of punk rock on this record, but this is them forging into some alternative rock territory. Now, Unwritten Law have always been known, particularly singer Scott Russo and drummer Wade Human, as being hellraisers, and I think notoriously been a little bit difficult to work with. The Unwritten Law have been through so many different record labels, a lot of the major labels as well, and they had a spell there between sort of this album and the next album, 2002's Elva, where they had some songs that were charting high. They even had a #1 song in America off the Elva album called Seeing Red, which is a wonderful song, but it never quite sort of sustained for them, and kind of went away pretty quickly, and then they went down to their sort of cult following level again. I absolutely adore this band. Again, like Strung Out, they represent so many different things within music that just really do it for me. I've followed this band sort of around the world. I've seen them in the States, and I've seen them in Australia. Again, they don't tour the UK. It just never has quite. They do have fans here, but not enough to kind of bring them over. This isn't my favourite of their records, but again, this is the place to start. This is the transitional record where you still get some of the fast punk rock of old, but just of higher quality. Songs like Harmonic, and then you have songs like Kaylin and Before I Go that have a much more just alternative rock vibe about them, and they really do meld the two together. So we're now moving on to a band on the list that I think are probably the hardest to describe, and that is Californian ska punk reggae progressive rock punk rock band RX Bandits.
Back to the illusion of safety. So fear just consumed to uphold the economy. Yeah, we always buy everything that they're selling, everything that they're selling. And pull apart the fun and children.
Perhaps more than any other band on this list, RX Bandits are just one of those bands that there's not much grey area. You either get them or you don't. Conversely to RX Bandits being one of the hardest bands on this list to describe, choosing which album to recommend to new listeners was one of the easier ones. And I've chosen 2003's The Resignation. So The Resignation sits pretty much at the halfway mark in the band's catalogue. And it's a really great point where they are still using a lot of ska and a lot of reggae and horns, which on their final, their most recent album, should I say, had been completely done away with. But there's a lot of sort of different time signatures and really cool progressive song structures and playing as well. The really cool thing about RX Bandits though is the fact that they again like great bands who straddle genres do, is they really piece it all together so that it never sounds tagged on or awkward. Everything really flows together, and they go from the sometimes really spacey reggae style jams, and then segue straight into like a real hard rocking riff bass section, and they write great choruses. Guitar player and lead vocalist Matt Embry has an absolutely wonderfully like warm toned voice as well, and once it gets under your skin, you just want to hear more of it. Funnily enough, most of RX Bandits are also in a band called The Sound of Animals Fighting. Now, The Sound of Animals Fighting are very much a post-hardcore progressive rock band, so they don't have the kind of hangover of the fact that RX Bandits used to be sort of more of a straight down the line ska band, but it's led to RX Bandits being pretty much inactive since 2014, which is sad, but there's a lot of great stuff to discover there, and all the albums are a kind of journey in their own right. Okay, so the penultimate entry on this list is I would say easily the least known, despite being on Virgin Records most of their career. That's Orange County, California's Over It.
We're broken-hearted when we spent the night under the stars. See me, your eyes focus on me, and wish that I could be.
Why Over It didn't make it, I'd really like to ask some of the members that question. They seem to have just about everything needed. Their timing was perfect. Funnily enough, the album that I'm recommending is their album Timing Is Everything, from 2002. Again, this was a tough one because although they do straddle a few genres and sounds, you could pretty much throw a dart, pick any of their albums, but Timing Is Everything I just chose because it's their most favourite, I think, to fans of Over It. I don't know whether, I mean, they did all the right tours, they made all the right moves. I think maybe one of the things they maybe didn't have was any huge kind of larger than life characters, which I think a lot of those kind of pop punk bands of the early 2000s kind of needed. I think as well, I mean, one listen to the band will tell you that they were perhaps just didn't slot neatly into any hole again. They sometimes they were way more accomplished players than most of the pop punk bands out there, so much so that they fell more into the kind of speed of them, they fell more into the skate punk realm, but they had so much melody, and it was almost like kind of like emo punk, like really gorgeous melodies and vocal lines, and some of the guitar work is just so tasteful, and they've got so many parts in songs that you just wait for. You can't wait to get to those bits. It's a really strange one with Over It, and it's still a band that I listen to a lot on a regular basis. A few of them, I think maybe 3 out of the 4 of them, went on to a band called Runner Runner that had some moderate success as well, that were kind of took the kind of more commercial end of Over It and sort of sanded off the punk rock edges. But I know that the vocalist, main songwriter Peter Munters is, I think he produces and he kind of releases solo stuff and things like that. So, but Timing Is Everything by Over It is a real hidden gem for me, and this was a band that was so tipped to make it but just never quite did. So the last entry on this list is arguably one of the most influential bands on the list, and that is Orange County's 18 Visions.
This world in pain, trying to rise again. This life is so-called murder, staring in angry horror. Don't want to live today when all I feel is pain.
18 Visions came up through the really fertile Orange County hardcore scene, and were always one of the really, really heavy bands in that, and sort of got adopted into the burgeoning metalcore scene of the early 2000s, which also featured the likes of Atreyu, Avenged Sevenfold, Bleeding Through, Throwdown, that kind of scene. 18 Visions were always a little bit different. I won't go into why, but they just presented themselves a little bit differently to the rest of the scene, and very much were lumped in with the whole term fashion core that was coined in the sort of early to mid 2000s. This was more obviously to do with how the guys dressed and wore their hair. I've chosen Obsession, which is their fifth album, and they had 6. Obsession is their most commercially successful album, but it's not their most accessible. That would have been the last record, the self-titled album. The previous album would have been also one I could have chosen. The previous record, Vanity very much was a crossover where they started doing a lot of the stuff that you would see on Obsession, but I still feel it's probably a little bit too caustic sounding just for someone that maybe isn't into the band, whereas Obsession is a bit easier, I would say, to get into on the ground level with 18 Visions, and then from there, obviously, you know, go in the different directions, and you'll be very rewarded. I mean, it's not to say that Obsession is all they have. I mean, their really early stuff is fantastic and was really groundbreaking as well. Yeah, Obsession, I mean, it's so heavy. It's like hard rock but played with really heavy down-tuned guitars. They're, you know, it's 35 minutes, 11 tracks. The hooks are just to die for, and there is some really, really brutal stuff as well. Just a great album. That there was one of those albums that sort of brought together heavy music fans from all different elements. You know, there was a lot of the sort of post-hardcore and emo kids liked it, and there was a lot of the metalheads that liked it. And I mean, Obsession really brought in a lot of, you know, hardcore guys. It was kind of the album that they and their girlfriend could like, and it's easy to see why. Without it being, you know, wimpy, it's still a really, really weighty album, partially due to the production and mix on it. I love this record so much. I was probably, I think, easily my most played album for about a year. Again, the vocalist really James Hart really was different for the time in his vocal approach, both his harsh vocals and his clean vocals. No one else sounded like him. Obsession was just a perfect example of right album at the right time. As I said, they did make one album after this and then called it a day, but they are back now and have released new material. But Obsession is where to get into with 18 Visions. That's it, guys. That's the 10. Thank you so much for watching. As I say, it's good to be back. I just needed time to discover why I was doing it. So if you wouldn't mind, if you know someone that would like this video or would appreciate the channel, if you could share, that'd be great. If you enjoyed this video, down below is the thumbs up button if you could like it. If you've stumbled in on here and you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please just think about having a click on that, because there'll always be something coming on the channel that you would be interested in. But as I always say, until the next one, stay rad.